so morena tātou, no mai haere mai whakatau mai kia kōrero I tēnei rā, he uri ahau o tainui ngā pui me nai te rangi, engari e tipu aki au ki tāmaki makaurau. He kai pūkaha paitahi rawa wai ki a DHD, me he PhD tauira ki a wai papatau matarau. Kōrero tuku ingoa. So hello and welcome everyone, and as mentioned in my introduction, I whakapapa or link all across the land really. So in the far north up in Kaikohe, in the Waikato, and in Tauranga, but my whole life I've spent in Auckland. I work as a water engineer for GHD, and I'm also currently working on my PhD, which is redefining engineering best practice through an Indigenous Te Ao Māori lens. So really privileged to be able to work on that, that piece of mahi. But to begin this presentation today, I wanted to begin with a story, because who doesn't love a good story? So this is a particular pūrākau, or again, a story which has been handed down for generations, and it goes something like this. So in a village nestled by a river, there lived a chief who had long cared for a magnificent taniwha. So this mystical creature, guardian of the waters, had ensured the prosperity and safety of the villagers for generations. And the chief took it upon himself to feed and nurture this taniwha. But one day the chief had to leave the village, entrusting the care of the taniwha to his sons. However, his sons proved to be neglectful and lazy, so days turned into weeks, weeks turned into months, and the taniwha grew hungrier. It grew restless and eventually furious. So unable to bear its hunger any longer, the taniwha emerged from the river, venturing onto land, and consumed the chief's son. So I don't actually tell the story to my children because I feel like it's quite graphic, but in a metaphorical sense, the story is representative of our well-being in relation to the environment, where the taniwha symbolizes the delicate balance of our natural world, which, when nurtured and protected, sustains and safeguards us. So the neglect and indifference of the chief's sons can be seen as the neglect of our environment, where ignoring our responsibility to care for the planet can lead to dire consequences for our well-being in the world we inhabit. And again, just as the story emphasizes the importance of tending to the taniwha, it underscores the needs to be stewards of our environment and secure a sustainable future, which is really what I'm hoping to touch on today and provide just that glimpse or insight into Te Ao Māori and that perspective. Now, just a cautionary note before I proceed really though, it's impossible to articulate the depth, breadth and entirety of a worldview, and including its fundamental concepts and values within a few slides, right? So, but I did again just want to show a brief insight to the holism and intricacies of Te Ao Māori, again highlighting that intrinsic relationship Māori have with Te Taia, the environment, and the profound connection with surrounding ecosystems. Also wanting to acknowledge too that there is no one Māori worldview or perspective on resource management, and that the perspective actually differs between each iwi, hapu, and even whānau, so that family level. However, I did want to capture some concepts and principles and relative to waste management, or just in general Te Taia and the relationship there. And the first one is whakapapa. Now, I'm not expecting everyone to like remember these words and like digest them, but I am bringing them up because they are this language I will use throughout the presentation. I also invite you, if there's a particular word that you resonate with, to like hold on to that. There might be something that you might get out of further on in the presentation. But again, just beginning with whakapapa, which directly translated is genealogy. We have Māori, which is the life force or the essence of all living and non-living things. So it connects everything in a holistic and spiritual understanding of the world. We have, I'll get back to my button. We have tapu, which is sacred or restricted. So it's acknowledging the spiritual significance of nature or certain objects or places and actions, requiring strict observance of customs and protocols to maintain the integrity of these elements. We have noa, which is the opposite of tapu, so to be free from tapu, and that allows for everyday activities and interactions without spiritual or cultural restrictions. We have matauranga, and I love this word, but it's a knowledge or a wisdom gained over thousands of years through experience. We have tikanga, which is correct procedures that guide Māori culture and interactions. We have rangatiratanga, which is exercising self-determination. We have kaitiakitanga, which is stewardship or guardianship. And again, I'll delve deeper into these, but again, these are the kupu or the words that I'll be using. We have kotahitanga, which is unity. Manakitanga, which is nurturing relationships. We have whanaungatanga, which is connectedness through shared experiences and activities. Then we have wairuatanga, which is spirituality, so acknowledging that there is a spiritual dimension to all existence. And at the very foundation of these principles or concepts is whakapapa, which I mentioned first. And so it's a fundamental aspect of how Māori understand the world and their place in it, and expresses how people connect to deity, the land, the waterways, and mountains, helping to define their role and responsibility towards it. So as direct descendants of Papa Tuanuku, which is Mother Earth, Māori are acknowledged as tangata whenua, or people of the land. And you can see on the screen there's a whakatauki or a saying, and it's ko au te whenua, ko te whenua ko au, I am the land is me. So this profound recognition highlights the genealogical link that Māori have with the environment and their fundamental kinship with deity. So it places Māori in this environmental context with all other flora and fauna and natural resources. Again, demonstrating their place as part of this hierarchical genetic assemblage with identifiable and established bonds. Again, highlighting that interconnectivity and interrelatedness of the natural world and all living things. So again, this in turn endows Māori with a sacred role and responsibility to care for those connections to the environment, which leads to the role of kaitiakitanga. So as part of this lineage, there are rights and obligations, again, conferred on Māori, establishing them as kaitiaki, or those guardians or stewards of the environment. So it's this active obligation to sustain and restore our collective resources, and in context to waste management, ensuring that the use of natural resources and management of waste align with Te Ao Māori. So meaning that those decisions about resource use and waste management should be made in consideration with Māori cultural values, beliefs, and practices, and again, holistically in harmony with the natural world. It also means, or complementing this obligation to protect Papa Tuanuku, includes avoiding the establishment of no new landfills and taking measures to reduce the harm caused by hazardous waste. And this can involve, again, better waste disposal practices and environmental protection efforts. We have advocacy for product stewardship and producer responsibility to central government. So this means encouraging manufacturers and producers to take responsibility for the entire life cycle of their products. So from production to disposal, it promotes sustainable product design and also responsible waste management practices. And protecting our waterways and ecology, which receive waste or wastewater. So this involves, again, preventing pollution and contamination of rivers, lakes, ecosystems by properly managing waste and wastewater to minimize environmental harm. And like this, again, if I relate it back to the pūrākau, the hierarchical prioritization, I guess you could say, is water, land, and people. And so again, it's about protecting the water, so in turn we have that well-being for the land, and the land can take care of us. Then we have rangatiratanga. And rangatiratanga is the Māori concept of self-determination, autonomy, and sovereignty. So it can relate to waste management in several ways, including where rangatiratanga emphasises Indigenous leadership and decision-making, so allowing Māori communities to take a leading role reflecting their values and priorities for their whenua orohe, so the land or the area. We have rangatiratanga also calls for preserving cultural practices by mitigating waste, practice and management impacts. We again have the revitalisation of cultural practices, so by embedding Te Ao Māori into waste management practices and solutions similar to kaitiakitanga, or following on from that in that responsibility or role. And then we have the promotion of community involvement and engagement. So rangatiratanga promotes, again, community involvement and empowerment, allowing all voices to be heard. So well, again, this is a concept that I love about rangatiratanga, but it's not just isolated to Māori. It's actually very inclusive, bringing everyone together, that kotahitanga, that unity that's required. So I just wanted to provide a little glimpse into how these concepts and values might interact, where whakapapa, so the Māori concept of genealogy that I talked about, and interconnectedness, forms the foundation of our deep connection to the environment. So providing that connection. And then we have our role as kaitiaki, or guardians, so it informs that role. And it emphasizes that we're intrinsically linked to the land, water, and all living beings through our ancestral connections, again, which endow us with this profound responsibility as rangatira, to care for Te Taia, or the natural world. And so together, our connection, role, and responsibility are upheld by key principles such as wairuatanga, kotahitanga, whanaungatanga, manaakitanga, mātauranga, guiding us to preserve and protect the environment for the well-being of both current and future generations. Now, if we look at things traditionally, so traditionally a closed loop system returned all toinga, so those remains or leftovers, back to Papatuanuku without detriment to the whenua, awa, or moana. We had tikanga practices which determined appropriate mechanisms to manage the system. For example, human organic matter was not mixed with toinga kai and other compostable materials. And then now if we come forward into a contemporary concept of parekore, which is zero waste, and that's a customary practice that brings mātauranga Māori and tikanga into sustainable waste management sector. And it recognises the intrinsic costs of waste on the aquatic and terrestrial environments and who will inherit those costs. So recognising the kaitiaki obligations of mana whenua and the atawhai, which is the kindness and generosity obligations of all Māori and people, is necessary for this change. And so incorporating mātauranga Māori and tikanga Māori into solutions and decision making by partnering with whānau, hapu, iwi, and communities creates this change and facilitates the transfer of knowledge and actions to and for future generations. So how do current waste management frameworks map against perhaps Te Ao Māori concepts and values? So if we look at the waste management hierarchy, which has been used to approach waste management since the early 1980s, you can see at the bottom of the hierarchy the least preferred option of managing waste, where it's focused on treat and dispose. And then as we go up towards the top of the waste hierarchy, it focuses on the diversion of waste and is centered around reuse and recycling. Again, with that top being the preference. But the stark difference between this framework and perhaps the Te Ao Māori concepts lies in the drivers for each. So where the waste hierarchy is product driven and Te Ao Māori concepts and values are resource and environmentally driven. I'll put another arrow here. Yeah. So again, if I'll just go back a page. But to me, when I look at this, again, the waste hierarchy is very end user or product driven, where Te Ao Māori prioritizes Te Taia, the water, the land first, which is quite a big difference in drivers. But if we put it together, I'll just share this. So this is the waste hierarchy here, which I've from the previous page, and just putting perhaps what it might look like in terms of heading up towards a Te Ao Māori perspective, where regenerate includes regeneration of ecosystems and cultural practices, again recognizing that the health of the land and its people are intertwined, so they are inseparable. And we have, as we move from the top of the hierarchy or way down, maybe I should go from the bottom up. Yeah, sorry, I'll go from the bottom up. But perhaps the first step is after reduce, rethink, and redesign is to remediate. So it's striving to remediate the damage caused by unsustainable consumption by revitalizing our lands, waters to ensure that they thrive once more. And then repair, and we've got repair here, but repair in the context of nurturing traditional craftsmanship and knowledge to mend what is broken, fostering a culture of sustainability and resourcefulness. So looking at it in that respect, or mirroring that in that second step above. And then we have restore, so actively restoring the balance between humans and nature, and recognizing our roles as guardians of the environment. Then we have replenish the resources that we use to ensure that future generations inherit a world abundant with natural wealth. And then, as I mentioned first, I should have finished off with last, at the top tier, regeneration. So it's the regeneration of ecosystems and cultural practices, again, recognizing that ultimately, and that's why it's at the pinnacle, ultimately, the health of the land is entwined with people. I'm not exactly sure how much time I have, but I did want to conclude. Oh, here's my ending slide. Okay, I wasn't expecting that, team, but I'll continue to go on. I just wanted to conclude and say that Te Ao Māori, or this Indigenous worldview of Māori people in New Zealand, offers like valuable insights and sustainable and holistic approaches to waste practice and management. So it emphasizes again that deep connection between humans and the environment, teaching us to respect and care for the land and its resources. So by embracing Te Ao Māori principles, we can enhance our understanding of the interdependence between people and the natural world, and paving for a more effective and culturally sensitive waste management practice initiatives. So again, thank you for allowing me to share my whakaaro, and kia ora tātou.